Every country has its own central bank, and every country prints its own money. But then why is it that almost every nation is in debt to someone? If printing money is that easy, why is every country still drowning in debt? This simple question actually reveals the deepest secrets of the global financial system. And to understand the answer, we first need to learn how money is created and why it keeps us permanently in debt. Once upon a time, money was merely a representation of value. A gold coin was value itself. Then government said, let's use paper, but make sure it's backed by gold. That was the gold standard, meaning every unit of currency was backed by a certain amount of gold reserves. But in 1971, US President Richard Nixon ended that system. From that moment on, the dollar's value was no longer tied to gold. It was tied to trust. This paper is money because the government says so. And that's how the fiat money era began. Fiat meaning, let it be so. From that point, money turned into debt, because behind it, there was no longer physical gold, only debt obligations. Most people think the government simply prints money and releases it into the economy, but the process is far more complex than that. The government issues bonds, essentially IOUs, to cover its budget deficit. Banks buy those bonds, and then the central bank buys those same bonds back from the banks with newly created money. The result? Every new dollar is someone's debt. In the financial system, the equation has become simple. Money equals debt. And here's the fact. If every debt in the world were paid off, there would be no money left in circulation, because money itself is born from debt. Banks don't just move existing money around, they create it. This is called the fractional reserve system. Suppose someone deposits $1,000 in a bank. The bank keeps only 10% of it in reserve and lends out the remaining $900 to someone else. That $900 gets deposited into another account, and the process starts all over again. In the end, that initial $1,000 becomes $10,000 in the economy, created out of nothing. The majority of money we see today exists not as cash, but as numbers created through debt. Today, the total global debt has exceeded $300 trillion, more than the real size of the world economy. And the most interesting part, most of this debt is not even meant to be repaid. The system is built in such a way that if debt stops growing, the economy collapses. The formula is simple. Money is created, debt is created, interest must be paid. To pay that interest, more debt must be taken, and as a result, more money is created. This endless cycle keeps governments, corporations, and individuals trapped in perpetual debt. Now let's get back to the main question. If everyone is in debt, then who are we paying it to? In reality, we are indebted to each other. Governments owe their citizens, banks, funds, and international institutions. For example, more than 70% of the US national debt is owed to its own domestic investors. It's a paradox. The government is in debt, but the lenders are its own people. The system feeds itself, a self-sustaining loop, but one that runs not on real value anymore, rather on psychological trust. Printing money can solve short-term problems, but the long-term result is always the same: inflation. History has proven this over and over again. In the 1920s in Germany, in the 2000s in Zimbabwe, and in the 2020s in Venezuela. The more money is printed, the less valuable it becomes. Yet the system keeps saying, print more. because the only way to repay debts is to create more money. It's a snake eating its own tail. Debt is not just an economic mechanism. It's also a tool of control. When a person is in debt, their behavior changes. When a government is in debt, its decisions change. The goal of the debt system is not just to make money, it's to gain power. Throughout history, empires haven't expanded through territory. They've expanded through debt. Rome, Britain, the United States, all built their influence through economic systems, not armies. Whoever controls the flow of money controls the future of the world. So yes, every country can print its own money. But behind every printed note, there's a debt. And behind every debt, there's power. Money isn't just a tool, it's the language of authority. Throughout history, empires have been ruled not by swords, but by debt. And today, we're still part of the same system. Only now, money is more digital, more invisible, and more powerful than ever. We see money as something that belongs to us. We believe we use it, that it works for us. But every single dollar in existence was born as debt. And the truth is, if all debts were paid off tomorrow, there wouldn't be a single cent left in circulation. Debt is the oxygen of this world. The moment it's cut off, the system stops breathing. This is not a new idea. This mechanism has been tested throughout history by many empires, and all of them faced the same end. When the Roman Empire began to lose its gold reserves, it started reducing the gold content in its coins and mixing in cheaper metals, like copper. Soldiers were still paid, but every year the money they received was worth less and less. Inflation soared, trade weakened, and eventually the Roman economic system collapsed. In the 18th century, the French government made the same mistake. The monarchy, drowning in debt, began printing new paper money called assignats to pay what it owed. For a short time, people had more cash, but less trust. Within a few years, prices had increased hundreds of times over, and by 1789, the French Revolution had begun. When money lost its value, the system itself vanished with it. Money looks like power to us, but what keeps it moving is debt. We believe we control money, yet in reality, it has long been the one guiding us. Throughout history, the only things that have changed are coins, currencies, and systems, but the nature of debt has never changed. Money is power. Debt is control. This is financial world, where money shapes power and history. Gave you a new perspective. Hit subscribe. History doesn't repeat. It reveals. I'll show you where to look.